Test. Sound is good. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Bismillah walhamdulillah wa salatu wassalam ala rasulillah. Um, this is an echo mic. Karam. Okay. So, Jazakumullah khair for coming. Um, the title of this new, what I hope to be a monthly gathering, is the Muslim family. This is a topic that I really focused on during Ramadan, and I hope to continue to focus on, throughout. And what personally inspires me to really dive into this topic is the fact that I have a son. And so, as I'm trying to learn myself how to be a good father for my son, how to build Iman in his heart, I hope to take what I learn and share it with the community, hopefully, that they can benefit from that as well. And inshallah, each month will be a different theme, a different topic. And the topic of this month is to better understand what our kids are saying about us. And so I did a very simple survey. I asked about 11 questions, and I sent it to the youth to see what the response is. And to be clear in terms of what those questions are, very simple questions like, how much do you feel that your mother loves you? How much do you think or you feel your father loves you? How much time does your mother give you? How much time does your father give you? And then at the end, I said, what are your complaints about your parents? Here is a list of common complaints. Which one applies to your mother? Which one applies to your father? And then in the end, overall, how do you feel your relationship is to your mother and to your father? And just to make this a little bit more interactive, when it comes to mother versus father, who do you think fares better? In other words, our children, do they have a stronger relationship with their mother or with their father? What do you think? What do you think, everyone else? All of them, all the youth in general. Mother, correct. It is mothers. I thought it was actually going to be fathers. I thought it would be fathers, but I was wrong. And there actually is a pretty big gap. The overall rating of those who took the survey, and it was pretty consistent. The youth had pretty consistent concerns. And overall, out of 5, mothers ranked 4.5 in terms of how close and how strong of a relationship these children feel they have with their mother. But with the father, it was around 3.5. Right? So a little bit above average, but that's not where we need to be when it comes to the challenges that we have in our times today. And so what I'd like to do for until Maghrib is to look at the common complaints. I tried to take all that they said and summarize it in what are the 2 biggest complaints that children have in terms of their mother, what are the 2 biggest complaints in terms of their father, and one in terms of both. Can you guess what is the complaint that they had for about both parents? We should know this because it's all about our culture. And that's definitely a big one, but it's not the, you know, these are there both for a particular parent, mother or father. What do most of our parents do? We do when it comes to engaging our children, both father and mother. We yell a lot. We yell a lot. Yelling, yelling, yelling. Now, to our cultures, it's kind of like what we call infialiyya. We're just in the moment. It's normal. And when I was in Jordan and I first got married and I rented with this individual, an old man, an older man who was retired from the army. And for those of the Arab world, we know what this means. A guy retired from the army, okay, this guy, I mean, he's going to be very stubborn. And this guy is something else. And we'd go back and forth. And me being my American self, when I engage him, I'd engage very calmly. When he would engage me, it's very, and when I would engage him calmly, it would make him more mad. I went to my wife, I'm like, why is he getting mad? Like I'm talking to him calmly, and when I talk to him calmly, it makes him mad. And she says he thinks you're not taking him seriously. He thinks that you're not really paying attention, you're just ignoring him. And it's normal that people start yelling when they talk. Now we've taken that culture and we're trying to apply it here in America, but we notice how news reporters speak, how professors speak, how the president speaks. It's calm. It's calm even when the topic is serious. It's not acceptable for a professor to start yelling when he's teaching, or for the president to start yelling when he's giving a talk or he's giving a khitab. Right? So when we, as parents, start yelling, when we engage our children, we think it's normal because that's the environment we lived in. And when we see the calmness of this culture, we're like, man, these guys are so boring. And so it's innocent, but our children are born and raised here in America where the expectation is that when we talk to each other, we talk to each other with a cool mind and a cool head. And when we see our parents as yelling and everything is yelling and everything's yelling, it, it doesn't click. My parents are just bizarre. And to kind of give you an example, I have a cousin who goes to Friday khutbah in Chicago, which is Arab land, very immigrant. And it's normal that the khatib, when he gives a khutbah, he's yelling. He's with a loud voice, even if the topic is normal, like the rulings of Salah. He's yelling and with a passionate voice. And so my cousin's looking, he's like, why is he yelling? Why is he yelling? So he goes to the sheikh after and says, Sheikh, I just want to know why are you yelling? There's nothing to yell about. And the sheikh just, it didn't click in his mind. Like, what's wrong with the fact that I'm being passionate? Now, if you're in an immigrant setting and I were to go there with my calmer way of presenting information, they'd look at me as this guy is boring. What am I going to do with him? But we're talking about our children now. We want to be able to better address our children, and yelling simply doesn't work. It doesn't work. In fact, it creates a disconnect. When our children see that their parents always respond with yelling and with a louder voice, what ends up happening is the following. We need to be aware with the culture. And with the culture, I'm talking about what our kids watch on TV. One of the strategies of atheists when they make movies and shows is to portray the religious person as being irrational and hot-headed. In anime, they'll show that. And so the stereotype of a religious person is they're hot-headed, they're unreasonable, whereas the atheist is calm, rational. So what happens? The child asks the parent a question. Parent goes off, blah, 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 blah. Or the child does something very simple or something that shouldn't be, an issue of anger. They become angry over it. Now what do? Oh, well, these cartoons, they're right about religious people. I see it in my parents. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Atheism must be right. And this sounds very oversimplistic. It sounds very, is that really the way they come to conclusions? But guess what? That is the way they come to conclusions. When they see the stereotypes about religious people, about immigrants, about Arabs, about Desis in the media in one way, that's intentionally trying to portray us negatively. And then we behave that way. It's like, oh, wow, they're actually right. They're not speaking, they're speaking the truth. And so we really need to watch the tone that we use. It's not an issue of I'm intending to be mean, or I'm just engaged in the moment. It doesn't really matter at this point. What matters is how our children perceive it, and we need to tone it down. And in fact, this is more in line with Quran and Sunnah. When we look at the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا تَجْهَرْ بِصَلَاتِكَ وَلَا تُخَافِتْ بِهَا وَبِتَغِ بَيْنَ ذَلِكَ سَبِيلًا. When we talk to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, don't raise your voice. Some of the Arabs, the Bedouins, would start yelling, oh Allah, this and that. And some would be very silent, they wouldn't even say anything. And so the Prophet comes and says, be moderate. When you recite Quran, when you lead Salah, when you make dua, do it in a moderate voice. Don't yell. Allah isn't deaf. He can hear you. And at the same time, be engaging. You don't have to be so, batted, as they say in Arabic. You're so cold. I don't know how to even translate it. You're so calm, overly calm, where you put the person to sleep. It feels like they're just disconnected. They're speaking something, but mentally, emotionally, they're not there. Be balanced. Also, the advice of Luqman to his son: "Waqsid fi mashik, waghdud min sawtik." Be moderate in the way you walk, and be moderate in the way you speak. Inna ankara al-aswat la sawtul hamir. The worst sound is the sound of donkeys. Their sound is just, it's agitated, it's loud. And so when a person is constantly yelling, it's just agitating. And always do this analogy, dear parents. Think about your own bosses and how you want them to treat you. Would you ever like your boss to just always yell? Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? Hurry up and do this. Why are you late? Why this? And it's always yelling. Would you be able to stand such a boss? You can say, no, I'm going to go find myself another job. I'm going to go start my own business. Well, if we don't like it for ourselves, why should we do it to our children? And so the complaint that the children had for about both of their parents is yelling, yelling. And we know this, right? We know this in our cultures. It's just the fact of the matter. Also, from a scientific side, when we become angry, the blood that flows to our brain, it shifts from the rational side of our brain, this front part, to another part. And so by default, when someone is angry, they are less rational. And so when we're engaging our children in a climate, in a culture that's very rationally driven, everything needs to be why this, why that. I need to be convinced to do this. I need to be convinced to do that. I want to know why this is the case. I need to understand why I'm doing this and why I'm doing that, why I'm not doing this, why I'm not doing that. When we approach our issues with anger, then it's going to create that disconnect with our children. In the behavior of the Prophet ﷺ, when Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha broke the plate out of jealousy, did he respond with anger? He didn't respond with anger. He responded very calmly and said, one plate for another. We broke something that's not our property, we need to replace it. Very calmly, let it go. Another time, Anas ibn Malik, this young man who used to serve the Prophet ﷺ, between the ages of 10 and 20. And this is when they make the most mistakes. This is when they're most rebellious. This is when they pay least attention and they just kind of ignore you. And the Prophet ﷺ was constantly around Anas, this young man. And not a single time did the Prophet say, Anas, why didn't you do this or why did you do that? In fact, when other people would criticize Anas and say, oh, the Prophet told you to do something, why aren't you doing it? The Prophet ﷺ would say, leave him be. If Allah wanted it, it would have happened. If Allah wanted it to happen, it would have happened. The calmness of the Prophet ﷺ, but it was through that demeanor, through that persona, where he won the love of his people. Not only that, he won their loyalty. They were so obedient to the Prophet ﷺ. Why? Because they loved him. Not because he was authoritative, not because he was forceful, not because he got his way or he was angry in the way he presented things. He won their love, and so they obeyed him. And, I could say this, some of your children are part of the youth group. You know their relationship with me. When they first started to come 5 years ago, right, they used to make problems. They didn't listen. They would be troublemakers, but slowly and surely, right, when I won their trust, now if I were to tell them to do something, they're going to do it. Right? And you parents, we could do that. We could do that if we just watch our ways, inshallah, and be more moderate and more prophetic in the way we engage our children. Okay, now let's go to mothers. When it comes to mothers, one of the main concerns or the main comments that our children had about mothers is disconnected from her child's challenges. What does that mean? It doesn't mean she's disconnected from their life. It means she doesn't understand the challenges that they're going through. Why? Because of the generation gap. This is not your own doing, parents, mothers. It's not your own doing. It's the reality we find ourselves in. Our cultures are very different than American culture. We know this. I don't have to explain it to you. The fact of the matter is, when we came here, right, we need to realize that the culture our children are growing up in is very different than the way we grew up and the expectations our parents had for us and what used to work with us. Back in the day, your parents were number one. You didn't want to upset your parents. Not only did that hurt you because you love your parents, that's shameful in society. Here in America, you're number two. You're not number one. You're not even maybe number 10. Uh, Hopefully number two. Maybe number 10. This is the way America engages children. You know, one of the reasons, you know how they go to school for so long? I don't think, how long did you go, were your school hours when you went to school? It was 7 hours around that time? Mhm. 8 to 3, less? How long? 4 or 5 hours, right? When I was in Jordan, I used to be shocked. I'm like, how long do these kids go to school? 4 hours it feels. It feels a lot less than here. Well, there's a reason why. In America, there's a philosophy when it comes to schooling. They intentionally take our kids for 8 hours. Why? So that they don't follow our ways. It doesn't mean that they want to make our children enemies of us. They want our children to be independent from the way we think. Why? So that society doesn't fall into this, my father did it, I'm going to do it. Like what the Arabian society fell into. And it has its merits. There's a good side to it. But at the same time, we need to understand why that's the case. Right? And this isn't, I want to take Muslim children away from them to change them. It's all American children. Right? And so parents, Muslim parents, find themselves not really finding in difficulty in terms of understanding the challenges of our kids. When you were growing up, did you have the problem of drugs? Maybe some people, maybe. But a criminal back then, right? When someone was a criminal back, like one gentleman told me, an elderly gentleman, it's like when we were growing up, if we hear someone was arrested, man, we want to go and look at him. Is this a human being? Someone did something wrong? When a couple get divorced, oh my God, my grandma told me this. If we hear someone got divorced, it was shocking, absolutely shocking. Today, if we hear people didn't get divorced, oh, mashallah, well, how did you make it work? Tell us. Right? So we have this challenge, the challenge of how can I understand the way society is thinking, the way society is teaching my child, and the way my child thinks. Well, I'm here to tell you that we could do it. There are ways to do it, and it's not going to change your life. It's not going to be very difficult, but it's something that we need to do. One thing that we need to do is we need to become more interested in what our children are interested in. What does that include? What TV shows they watch. Be interested in the movies and the shows they're interested in. The applications that they use, the games that they play. Be interested in that. And say, hey, can I watch with you? Or can I play with you? Can you teach me how to play this? It'll excite them. Oh my God, my parent wants to do something that I like. And when you do that, you're putting yourself in their environment. That's going to allow you to see what's going on. And it's so important for our parents, for the parents to understand the shows they're watching. They are influenced by these shows. And or these shows portray their life. You know, there's a new Marvel show called Miss Marvel or Ms. Marvel. Have you heard of this? Yeah? I'm watching it. Yeah. Tell them to give us some. Okay, we'll go ahead and pause until they come back. In the meantime, we can just have a Q&A if you want to ask questions in terms of what we've gone over so far. If any questions. Someone fill in the gap. It is. They really appreciate it. Hmm. Yeah. 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 And how to communicate with them. Right. And this is a proverb, a wisdom taken from the Arabs that discipline your child when they're young and be their friend when they get older. Right. Um, and that's it's very important when it comes to the American lifestyle. And there's a lot of challenges that I just simply don't have time to go into today. But we're living a difficult time when it comes to parenting and family relations. But when I research and I look, it's not that difficult to overcome. It's not, but it requires some minor adjustments in terms of how we engage our children, in terms of how we understand them. Inshallah, there can be some great fruits that come out of that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying. So for those online, the comment was, after working 12 hours and I come home and the kids are fighting, it's like I just want a little bit of peace of mind, right? I need to rest to be able to go back to work the next day, and that's understandable. But there is a challenge to that, and that is, you know, we have to make sacrifices for our children. What happens so often is that we're so engaged in work and it tires us, and then we have no energy for our children. Right? Our children have rights over us as well. And American society doesn't exactly make it easy for us to balance the two. It doesn't. America as a country is not structured around the family. It's not. It's structured around the individual. It's very easy to live an individual life. Very easy here in America. All the conveniences are there. You can live your entire life without having to rely on anyone here in America. But it creates that big challenge when it comes to having a family. And in another research, not what I did, researchers asked their children about one request that they have of their parents. And the assumption was the kids were going to say, I wish my parents gave me more time. But the response actually was, I wish when my parent spends time with me, they're not so tired. That was their response. That's a very brilliant response, to be quite honest. Right? There is refreshments in the back if you want to maybe take a moment and get some while everyone else comes back. Uh, can I bother you to open the door? Oh, he's going around. I think there's coffee, tea, some fruits. At any time, please feel free to go and get some. Go ahead. Hmm. Hmm. Mm. Just tell them. Just say, okay, I got you. Relax, relax. Once, twice, three times, they'll get used to it, right? And for those who have just this natural way, they naturally speak loudly. Counter the negative perception of the child by yelling and making it funny. Right? So if you have this tendency to yell a little bit more, or you like to yell, or just that's just your personality, yell when you're doing things that are funny, or when you say a joke, yell, or when you're playing with them, yell and smile and laugh, so that they feel like when you yell, it's not threatening. You're just talking to them. Right? So that's one way to balance that. Okay, continuing. So we're talking about how mothers can better understand their children, and we're really focusing on becoming interested and participating in the things that they do, the activities that they do. And one of the ways we can do that is watching the shows that they watch. And we began talking about the new show, Ms. Marvel, which is a Marvel superhero who is Pakistani Muslim origin. She's Pakistani Muslim. And the writer of the show is Pakistani, and the characters are Pakistani, and they're showing really, it resonates with me a lot because what I'm seeing is very similar to what I experienced growing up. And as of now, I'm very happy with the way things are because they're portraying the family as we know them to be. But at the same time, you can catch some of the things that, okay, wait a minute. Right? So in one moment, in one scene, she was getting dressed for, I guess, a wedding. She's trying on a wedding dress. And the tailor tells the girl, this Pakistani girl, that you're too short for the dress. And the mother's response is, the dress is too long. Don't criticize my daughter, the dress is too long. And then her mother's friend comes in, Assalamu alaikum, how are you? And all, the niceties that we know. And then her friend says, your daughter's too short for the dress. And then her mother turns to her daughter and says, you're too short for the dress. It's like, wait a minute. Just now you criticized the tailor for saying that, now you're saying it. Now for us, we understand why. Okay, uh, friends versus this random person, but to the mind of an American-born person, why are you contradicting yourself? What's the deal here? And I've lived in Jordan for a while. I used to see this a lot. My family, you cannot touch it. But when I talk about my family, I say whatever I want. The contradictions in our behaviors. So when we watch these shows, we catch these things that we don't observe in ourselves because we can only observe so much. So when we watch these shows, we're able to connect with what our children are seeing because Ms. Marvel is just a portrayal of what it's like to be a Pakistani and a Muslim. The masjid scene, I love that. It was hilarious because it's 100% true. 100% true. That's how it is. And so when we observe this, oh, wait a minute, this is what's going on. And this is how people are thinking. And even me, I'm thinking, okay, man, I better double check the women's area, make sure everything's okay before, that applies on me as well. So we can spend some time doing that, watching the shows, and I highly recommend watching Disney movies and Marvel movies. These two are the culture makers of our time. These are the hot movies. These are the movies that not only are very entertaining, but they're very ideological. They're portraying something, they're influencing culture. So watch these movies and watch it with your children and don't annoy them. I know we tend to ask 1,001 questions. Why this? What's going to happen next? And our children are like, oh my God, just let it happen. We will see what's going to happen. Wait until the end of the movie and then ask them questions. And we'll also begin to view the things that they're trying to put in the mind of our children, like LGBT and this stuff. And have a conversation around these things. Did you notice what happened? What is that? Can you tell me what that means? I didn't quite get it. What did that joke mean? You were laughing, I wasn't laughing. What does it mean? You have a conversation, they explain it to you, and now you're able to connect a little bit more. So the first criticism, or I guess the first comment our children had about their mothers is they are disconnected from the challenges that their children are facing. And number two is that their mothers are too involved. You're there too much. And again, our cultures, that's out of love. I'm being a mother, that's my role, and I'm proud of that. But let's take a step back and understand some of the long-term implications for that. There's an individual who got married, and when he got married, his mother went to his now daughter-in-law and said, look, I'm not going to interfere in your life. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but there's one thing you must do. You have to do this. Okay, what is it? Every day, every night, prepare my son's clothes for the next day and just hang it up on his closet. Okay, I mean, I'll accept that. If that means you're not going to interfere and you're not going to cause problems, okay, I'll accept that. And so she did it. But one day she forgot. One day she forgot to hang his clothes on his closet. And so the next day, this guy gets up, doesn't bother his wife, doesn't say anything, and he chooses his clothes, goes to work. Everybody's looking at this guy. And his friend comes, tells him, "Did you look in the mirror?" He's like, "No, why?" He's like, "Your clothes don't match." He's like, "Why? It doesn't match? I don't know." Okay, what's going on? Why? Well, it turns out his mother every single day chose his clothes, to the extent that this guy cannot choose his own clothing as a grown man. He's not independent. He's dependent on a woman to choose his clothing. Now, I understand that women have a better taste in clothing. I understand that. But the point here is, when a mother is too involved, what essentially it does to the child, it makes them dependent on other people. They're not independent. They can't do things by themselves. And you see this over and over again. You probably maybe have a sister or a cousin or someone you know who's like this. Don't do anything, my son. Don't do anything, my daughter. I'll take care of everything. Cooks, cleans, does everything. You just study, you just study. And then when these kids get married, they have no idea what to do. They have no idea how to take care of things. Yes, they can learn. Yes, they can learn. But the point is, when we as parents are too involved and we do too much for our children, we're too concerned about them, we're too protective of them, we essentially restrict them, make them dependent on other people, and overall weaker. Weaker. And so, what we can do in terms of preparing our children and not being too involved is try and understand the small tasks. Our children need chores to learn how to do things. Our children need to learn how, both male and female, I'm saying, how to at least cook a few things. I'm utterly shocked at some people, they don't know how to cook spaghetti. I mean, spaghetti is the easiest thing to cook. You literally buy a jar of sauce, pasta, you throw it in boiling water, let it cook for a few minutes, take the water out, pour the sauce on, you're done. And some kids go to college, they have no idea how to do it. And now they're living alone and they're eating out every single day. Why? Because I don't know how to make spaghetti. They get married and they have no idea what it means to be a husband, no idea what it means to be a wife, no idea how to make these take care of these small basic responsibilities. Um, so, mothers, give space to your children to grow. Don't just be a helicopter. They call this helicopter parenting. They're just over their children. And I see this in playgrounds. When I take my child to the playground, there are so many parents who are literally just over the head of their child, making sure that there's nothing that they step on that might be dangerous. And anytime they climb something, they help the child. That's not right. You all growing up, I'm sure you have some very fun stories of the things you used to do, the places you used to go, the places you used to jump off of. When I used to go to Palestine, oh my God, we used to climb the mountain, come down. It was fun to get a cut, to start bleeding. It was something manly, and you grow. Yes, there's an amount of danger, but if the child doesn't have the ability to take some risks, how are they going to become a business person? Well, business is about taking risks, is it not? A lot of growing in life is about taking a risk and having the courage to take a risk. And my generation, the younger generation, they're afraid to do anything. They're afraid of everything. Look at all these mental health problems, OCD, obsessive compulsion disorder. They're afraid of germs. They just have germs. They keep cleaning. They keep cleaning. They're afraid of the environment. Why? Because they've never been in the environment, or they haven't been in it enough to feel and to know that it's not dangerous. So mothers, don't be too involved in the lives of your children. This doesn't mean we let them loose and go do whatever you want. And the opposite end, we have to have that balance. Okay, now let's go into fathers. The number one complaint, I was shocked by this. I did not expect this. The number one complaint our children had about their fathers is, and this is serious, narcissism. What's in Arabic called al-alaq al-masmuma, narcissism. What's narcissism? Narcissism, by definition, is selfishness involving a sense of entitlement, a lack of empathy, a need for admiration as characterizing a personality type. These are fathers who they're constantly criticizing their family members, constantly criticizing their wife, constantly criticizing their children, constantly disapproving everything they do, anything they do. It's disapproval after disapproval. They use mockery. Oh, look how silly you look. You're such a bad and they make fun of the other people. I'm talking about with their wife and with their children. Um, They put others down. Others have no worth except through them. Meaning, the only reason you, as my wife, have any value is because I'm in your life. That's it. This is a narcissist. And I'm shocked at how many of the respondents, which isn't a large group, but of them, I'm shocked how many of them mentioned that their father is a narcissist. And I highly doubt any of them are here. But I was absolutely shocked. And this is something that I guess I have to focus on more. Maybe I'll give a khutbah or so, but I need to prepare myself and do a little bit more research in terms of how do we deal with this. So, narcissistic parenting, essentially, the parent explodes without warning, or will collapse in tears anytime a child dares to express a need. So they constantly have this reaction that's very extreme. They force sensitive children. It forces sensitive children to take up as little room as possible in their lives, as if having any expectation at all is an act of selfishness. So they will take this narcissism and start accusing other people of that. You think I'm self? No, you're the selfish one. You're the bad one. You're the one who's irrational. You're the one who's this. These are the worst people you ever want to deal with. Very difficult. And for anyone who has a father like this, or a husband like this, or a wife like this, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help you. Uh, but we need to realize the harms. So what are the harms of narcissistic parenting? So for any mothers who has a husband who's like this and who treats their children like this, we need to understand the harms it's having on our children to take up and try and protect our children. It creates in our children chronic self-blame. They're constantly blaming themselves for problems. Now, I grew up here in America, and I had my group of Muslim friends, and I see the youth. When the youth are in public school, and when they're just generally in public, they feel very weak. They're quiet. They're not like the stars of the school. They're not the ones who are the cool ones, the ones who are the leaders. They're desperate to find a friend. Where is this coming from? If I know Arab culture, this isn't our personality. I know Desi culture. It's not their personality. Why is it that our children have these types of personalities, weak personality when they go to school? Well, a lot of it has to do with parenting style. When a parent is constantly shutting their child down, your opinion is not of value, your opinion is silly, what essentially it sets a precedence in the mind of the child that, well, if my father is telling me this, then it must be true even in school. And so in school, they don't give up an opinion. Well, because my opinion, it doesn't matter. It doesn't make any sense. It's not worth it. I'm not even going to try. I'm not even going to embarrass myself. When a child says their opinion in front of their family, their father, they start laughing. What silly, you know nothing, just go away, don't talk, it's better that way. And now they're internalizing this. So they constantly blame themselves. They suffer from not having a voice, as I mentioned. They're followers, they're not leaders. Well, the companions, they were leaders. Muslims were leaders. Islam teaches us to be leaders, not followers. Islam is meant to make us independent, not dependent on other people. And so this is a big problem that's very widespread in our youth. They feel like they have no voice. They have no opinion. They shouldn't say their opinion because it doesn't matter. Where is this coming from? It's not coming from school. It's coming from the home. And so be aware of that. They develop insecure attachment. They're always afraid to build a relationship. Why? Because, well, the father set the precedent. Be careful. You can't be close to me. You're not worthy of me. You're not worthy of anyone else. And so it becomes difficult for them to get married, to make that commitment. And if they're married, they're constantly second questioning themselves. A lot of married couples who are constantly begging for their spouse's attention. Do you love me? What do I mean to you? They're constantly asking these questions. This is someone who doesn't have strong self-esteem. But where's that coming from? It's not coming from the spouse. It's coming from the parenting that they received. They're in need panic. They develop need panic, where the people most afraid of their needs are apt to seem the most needy. So as a result of this type of parenting, they become more needy by default. Now, these are some of the harms. This is very serious. But the question is, what can we do? Now, I don't know how to change a narcissistic personality. And, for the wives out there whose husbands are like this, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give you patience. May Allah give you strength. Not only do you have to suffer because of your husband, you also have to suffer because you're seeing the damage on your children. But this is a responsibility that has been put on your shoulders. May Allah give you the tawfiq to take care of that. But as a mother, the mothers really need to step in and double their game to protect their children from having long-term problems as a result of this. So what are some things that the mothers can do? Well, counter the damage done to their self-esteem by reinforcing their self-esteem. So narcissism kills a person's self-esteem. Well, what do we need to do to counter that? Well, we need to strengthen their self-esteem. What can we do? Well, by constantly telling the child, oh, you did good here. They got an A on a test. You did good here. Well done. Good job. They completed some sort of accomplishment or some sort of task. Congratulate them for that. Praise them for that. Let them know that I've noticed your accomplishment and your accomplishment. This is an accomplishment. Good job. And share that with your friends while they're listening. You have friends over and your child is there. Start talking, man, my son got an A on his test. Oh, mashallah, good man, that's impressive. I know that's a hard course. Build that self-esteem in the child. Let them know that, wait a minute, it's only my father who's treating me this way. Everyone else seems to be okay with me. So that they know it's not a problem with me. It's a problem with my father, right? Or the narcissistic person. So really reinforcing the self-esteem. Emotionally, okay, so the first major concern when it comes to fathers is narcissism. The second is emotionally disconnected. In Arabic, al-jafaf al-atifi. There's no emotions. And there's a lot of fathers who are like this. Why? Again, things were tough when our fathers were being raised. Colonialism, the wars, the revolutions, the upheaval, the political chaos, right, that developed a certain persona. And our fathers had their fathers who the emotional side of the human being wasn't really there. It wasn't respected. And so a lot of fathers have trouble emotionally connecting with their children. Their emotions are just not there. And when they say something, it's in a very dry way. There's no excitement. Oh, you got an okay, good job, mashallah. That's it. Okay, is anything else? Can you show me some excitement? No. You're getting married? Okay, congratulations. You're getting married, mashallah. Good luck. Right? Or when the child talks to the father cannot sustain a conversation more than 2 minutes. Right? And I see this sometimes, phone call. My grandmother was like this. May Allah have mercy on her. She was like this. I talked to my dad, said, hey, talk to your grandma. Okay. Assalamu alaikum. How are you, grandma? Oh, I'm good, I'm well. You doing okay? Okay, yeah, okay, bye. That's it. I'm like, we didn't even say anything. Emotional dryness. So the father's hardworking, takes care of the home, but is emotionally disconnected. So the father is doing a lot of their fatherly duties, but this emotional disconnection is a challenge. It is a problem. Our children, part of their lack of self-esteem is that the father, are you excited that I'm even in your life? Are you happy when you see me? A lot of our cultures, the father enters, stands there, and everyone has to become quiet. Come say salam to me, and it becomes serious. No talking on the table. I remember my uncle, I have two uncles that are very funny from my mother's side. He said that when they were young, these two brothers were kind of trying to make each other laugh on the table so that they get the other one in trouble. So one of my uncles kept doing this, like this, to make the other one, and the other one started laughing. And so the first one doing this started laughing, and my grandfather got up and, disciplined them, right? I'm started thinking, so what's the big deal if they start doing this? I mean, they're kids. That's how it was back then. You're at the table, silence. I come home, silence. No one talks, right? That may have been meaningful back then. Today, it's not meaningful. The child needs to come to see their parents when they come home. I'm happy to see you. Doesn't have to be, hey, son, I'm happy to see you. It's good to say that, but through the actions. What happened? What do you do? Oh, father, look, I did this. And, oh, my God, tell me more. I'm here. Be emotionally engaged. And so men often express their love through action. I'm working, I'm providing you. That means I love you. That's true. That's true. But again, the child might not understand that until later in life. But for now, they need that emotional attachment. It means so much to a child when you look in their eyes and you say, "You did that? Marshall, that's so impressive. Tell me how you did it." Oh, wow, my father really sees me as something worthy. But our cultures teach that we shouldn't express our love through words and our emotion through words. Well, the Prophet ﷺ had a different persona. He was very emotionally connected with his companions, and Allah praises him for that. لَقَدْ جَاءَكُمْ رَسُولٌ مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ عَزِيزٌ عَلَيْهِ مَا عَنِتُّمْ حَرِيصٌ عَلَيْكُمْ بِالْمُؤْمِنِينَ رَءُوفٌ رَحِيمٌ. These are all emotional engagements. A messenger has come to you. He is bothered, he is burdened. What burdens you? He feels your pain. And he's hasty and he pursues what is in your interest. He's excited when you're happy. He's excited when you do good things. Like one time, a few Bedouins came and they said, "Ya Rasulullah, we have no money. Can you please help us?" So the Prophet ﷺ got on the pulpit and said, "Some people need help. Please come and help them." And people came from all across Medina with their money and they were giving. And the Prophet, you can see it in his face. It became like as bright as the moon from his happiness. Emotional response. Imagine seeing that. Just thinking about the face of the Prophet ﷺ smiling, it melts the heart. How about actually seeing it? So having that emotional connection is the way the Prophet ﷺ used to engage the children. When Fatima radiallahu ta'ala anha, his daughter, would come in and visit her father, what would he do? Stand up, go to her, hold her hand, kiss her, walk her to where he was sitting, and sit her down where he was sitting. The emotional response. But what was the fruit of that? When he would go to her house, she would do the same exact thing. And my mother-in-law would constantly kiss my son's hands. And I'm like, is she spoiling him? What's she doing? And she said, when I do this to him, he's going to do it to me. And I kid you not, after a few days, he started kissing her hand. So if we want the respect of our children, we want to see our children happy, we want them to listen to us, we have to do that for them first. That's how it works. Being emotionally connected. He was emotionally connected with his wives. When Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha had a severe headache, and she said, "Wa ra'sa, oh my God, my head hurts so much." The Prophet's response was, "No, Aisha, my head hurts so much." And one of the interpretation was, he didn't have a headache, but he was saying, "I feel your pain. I wish it was me who was feeling that pain and not you." Emotional response, emotional connection. And the Quran, when you look at the Quran, how it talks to us, the Quran is meant to reach here. Meant to move here. It's meant to make the heart feel khushu'ah, feel khashya, this awe, this connection, emotional connection to Allah, to move our hearts. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the prophets and the righteous people. وَإِذَا سَمِعُوا مَا أُنزِلَ إِلَى الرَّسُولِ تَرَى أَعْيُنَهُمْ تَفِيضُ مِنَ الدَّمْعِ مِمَّا عَرَفُوا مِنَ الْحَقِّ. When the Prophet speaks, the Christians who would become Muslim and accept Islam, they would start crying out of what they hear, emotionally connected. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also says, وَيَخِرُّونَ لِلْأَذْقَانِ يَبْكُونَ وَيَزِيدُهُمْ خُشُوعًا. When they hear the Quran, they will respond with tears, emotional response. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also says about the prophets, إِذَا تُتْلَى عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتُ الرَّحْمَنِ خَرُّوا وَإِذَا تُتْلَى عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتُ الرَّحْمَنِ خَرُّوا لَهُ سُجَدًا وَبُكِيًّا. Right, thank you. When they would hear the verses of Allah, they would start crying. And so this Western notion where the man doesn't cry, remember the 80s movies? Jean-Claude Van Damme, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Rambo, these guys. This guy who throw him in the middle of a jungle against an entire army with a few bullets will win. And he feels no pain and doesn't have time to cry. This is a very damaging way of being a person. Whereas the prophets, the companions, when they would cry, they would see that something worthy of praise. Till this day, when a man cries in the Arab world, it's not seen as something shameful. It's seen as something, this guy has a heart. He's emotionally connected. Right? So emotions are part of being a human being, and fathers really need to be emotionally connected to their children. Now, just doing brief research, There are benefits to being emotionally connected to your child. When a father is emotionally connected to the child, it sends a message to the child, like it gives them someone to trust. When a father emotionally connects to their child, it's telling the child, you can trust me. I feel things. I feel, if you're feeling something, I can feel that too. Another benefit, it tells them they are valuable. If I am emotional with my children, if I show them an emotional response when they do something, and they can see it in my eyes, they can hear it in my voice, essentially I'm telling them, you're valuable to me. And in our days today, not just Muslims, Americans in general, they feel a lack of self worth. I feel meaningless. I feel like I have no purpose. I'm not worthy of anything. Men and the crisis of manlyhood here in America, part of it is I feel like I have no role. I have no purpose. I'm not of any benefit to society. And this is a major problem. But when we are emotionally connected, it sends the message to our children, you are valuable. Number three, it gives them courage. It gives them courage. See, when some parents, when they're not emotional with their children, they say, I don't want to spoil them. I don't want them to think that they're, more valuable than they're more than they actually are. I'm afraid that they'll become arrogant. No, research shows the opposite. When you are emotionally connected to your children, it actually develops courage. They become courageous. Number four, it gives them time to grow because emotions is part of human growth. When we emotionally face something, we grow. And trauma, if it's not emotionally dealt with, then it stays bottled up and it suppresses the person. But once they're actually able to emotionally deal with their trauma, start to cry, let it out, now they're removing that and it's time to grow. So when we communicate emotions to our children, it's actually helping them grow. In marriage, if a wife has an emotionally disconnected husband, it's very difficult for her to be in that relationship. And I see this over and over and over again. And the same thing with the husband. If he sees that my wife is emotionally disconnected, I mean, what am I doing? What is this relationship really? Is it really worth investing in? And the same thing applies with our children. Number five, it allows them to make mistakes. Because let's be honest, a lot of our emotions when something wrong happens, whether it's by our own doing or by the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we cry because of some tragedy, the loss of a loved one, well, we're experiencing that, these things happen. It's okay. If I cry because I made a mistake or I did something wrong or I didn't accomplish what I wanted to accomplish, well, it's teaching the child that, hey, you can make mistakes, life will continue. Don't worry about it. You'll be okay. Well, there are some people who are such perfectionists where they're afraid to do something because they're afraid of making a mistake. I'm afraid of getting married because I'm afraid that my marriage will fail like my sister's marriage failed, or my aunt's marriage failed, or my parents' marriage failed. So emotional connection teaches our children that, you know what, mistakes are part of life. It's okay. It's okay to make a mistake. You'll grow. Number six, it produces joy. When you see a friend and they're so happy to see you, well, how does that make you feel? When you go home and your husband is smiling, your wife is smiling, that emotional connectivity, well, how does that make you feel? It brings you joy. And so I constantly tell new couples, if you want to be happy, smile to each other. Smile to each other. It's so simple, but so important. It's part of our religion. And so when you communicate emotions to your children, it makes them happy. Again, child comes and says, look, Baba, look what I did. It might be something silly. They drew something. They say, oh, okay, congratulations. I'm going to go and sit down. I'm tired. Don't talk to me. Versus, you drew that? How did you draw that? How you draw it? Tell me everything about it. Oh my God. It produces that joy. And that joy helps the person grow, builds optimism in their worldview. Number seven, again, this is the seventh benefit of emotional connectivity. It provides connection between the father or the parent and the child. And discipline is far easier to receive when the motives are not self seeking. What does this mean? When a parent tells their child to do something, but the child feels that my parent is telling me to do this because it's in their interest. It benefits them, not me. Then it's less likely for them to respond. But when the child feels that I'm doing this for you, and they sincerely believe that, they're more likely to do it. And they're more likely to see their parent as rational. And emotional connectivity communicates to them that meaning. Oh, do it, draw it again. Draw it again. Let me see. You're telling them to do something, but they're seeing it as, oh, this is for me. I'm doing this. And so emotional connectivity helps create that connection. Um, and it also teaches a child to learn to correct themselves. Again, showing that this is actually part of disciplining the child, not spoiling the child. It gives them hope. It takes away fear. It's number 9. Number 10, it makes them part of something bigger than themselves. Again, emotional connectivity doesn't spoil them. It teaches them that they have a responsibility to the rest of their family. My happiness involves you, and that means you need to be part of my life. It communicates that to them. I'm going quickly here because it's almost time for Maghrib. And number 11, last but not least, it provides motivation to love others. When a child has a childhood, an upbringing that's very loving, they will learn to love and to learn to love their own children, learn to love their spouses. Right? But what you find when a family is emotionally dry, right, it restricts that ability. And so, inshallah, that concludes my talk. I had to go a little bit quickly there at the end, but inshallah, after Maghrib, we'll come back and have an open discussion with the night ta'ala if anyone has any questions. And remember that refreshments are in the back, so after sunnah prayer, please do help yourself. Inshallah, we'll come back after salah. Jazakumullah khair.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد